Okay, while things will change, it is always fun to look ahead and ask ourselves, how does the 24 class compare to the 23 class in Dynasty football? Well, I'm ranking them together for you guys today. So do me a favor, drop a like to show some love. I've been diving into the 24 class. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. And I want you to comment down below your favorite player in the 24 class. Can be anyone. Name a player in 24. I want to know who it is in the comments below. And hey, if you want an edge on your Dynasty leagues, go ahead and use our code LAND when signing up to flockfantasy.com. You got articles, you got rankings, one quarterback super flex, rookie only, and more, as well as personalized advice through a DM. Okay, let's get straight into the rankings. I've got 7 tiers for you guys today, and I'm ranking about 25 to 30 players. And of course, context is important. The rankings for the 24 players and the 23 players will change drastically by the time we actually draft the 24 guys next year. So that just needs to be said. This is how I view them right now based off the scouting I've done from the 2022/2023 season. And so if you're, if you got picks in 2024 in Dynasty, or if you're playing Devy, hopefully this is helpful. Let's start in tier number 7. I'm going to go with a quarterback that I'm going to be honest, I don't really know that much about, but I'm just trying to connect a couple dots here. Okay, Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty damn good. So is Emeka Egbuka. So is Travion Henderson. Who's their quarterback this year? Right now, it looks to be Kyle McCord. So he's had a couple comps to a Matthew Stafford before. I mean, if he balls out, there's a chance that we could definitely be talking about him in a Dynasty perspective as he takes over for CJ Stroud. Right next to him, I would have Jatavion Sanders, the tight end out of Texas. This dude is a freak athlete, 5-star recruit, committed to Texas. They weren't sure exactly how to utilize him just yet. Now he's looking, since last year, they've been playing him at the tight end position. He doesn't have any sort of ridiculous statistical season, but often with tight ends who enter the NFL, the intangibles, the athleticism, the things that you can't teach are more important because coaches are confident they can teach you how to play the position. But I'm a big fan of Sanders. He's a ridiculous athlete. I mean, if we were just ranking athletes only, he would probably be up there in tier 1 or 2, if we're honest. Okay, next, let's talk about the wide receiver out of Oregon. That is Troy Franklin. A little bit of a weird body frame, right? He's 6'3", he's 180. So typically at 6'3", you'd want to see him right up there around 190, 200 pounds. He's a really lanky guy, makes huge strides. But out of his high school class in 2021 in the state of California, he was the 2nd ranked recruit, and he was the 3rd highest wide receiver recruit in the nation in 2021 coming out of high school. He improved a lot from his freshman to his sophomore season. I wonder why that is, because Bo Nix transferred from Auburn to Oregon, had a fantastic year. These guys became best friends, and Troy Franklin shows a really solid skill set. He's got consistent hands, really good at tracking the ball over his shoulder, in the air, contested catches, really elusive after the catch. I did not personally anticipate him being that hard to tackle after the catch. He's like weirdly hard to grab. I feel like he would be a fantastic flag football player as well, but he could definitely blow up in 2024, and you need to keep an eye on him. Then we'll look at a couple players from the 2023 class. We'll talk about Will Levis, a player that I was very low on entering the NFL draft. I got a lot of hate for it, but look, even as much as I disliked Will Levis coming in, he still was drafted early 2nd round, almost 1st round. He was a 33rd pick to a franchise that has no clear answer moving forward at the position. You think about Jalen Hurts, who was a 2nd round pick, who had the mobility. Is there a chance that Will Levis is a bust? Of course, there's a higher chance that he's a bust than a superstar, but he's worth taking here in tier 7. And right next to him is where I put Zach Charbonnet. Man, it sucks. I mean, I'm still kind of reeling, honestly. We spent so long scouting these 23 draft class players and just fell in love with Charbonnet. For him to be stuck behind Walker and just in that weird situation, am I the only one? I'm still kind of reeling myself. It's so frustrating. The talent, he should be so much higher than this tier 7. Okay, on to tier 6. We'll talk about Quinn Ewers, who, had an up and down season, but he's a highly touted recruit out of high school. He showed some flashes. He's got some really good weapons around him. Let's see if he can build on that year. He's currently projected to be a late first round pick. So anything's a possibility. If you're drafting in, let's say, like a Devy league right now, he's someone that I think is worthy of, like, let's say a early to mid second round pick in a Devy draft. And right next to him is where I will place his number one receiver there at Texas, Xavier Worthy. And I know I'll probably get a lot of hate for this because I know there's a lot of Xavier Worthy stands out there. Look, I'm just not one of those stands. I'm sorry. I see some serious limitations for him at the next level. I've said this before, but to me, Worthy is probably a better collegiate player than he is an NFL player or a fantasy football asset. Super explosive athlete, unquestionably. 4-star recruit, dangerous downfield, can get separation. But the concerns for me, here's a couple of them. The drop issues in 2022. Now, he was tied for the 23rd highest amount of drops amongst 700 plus tracked wide receivers in college football last year. So that's pretty concerning. I understand he had a hand injury, but we just need to see that improve. That's all I'm saying. And also, it's quite disappointing when someone has a better freshman year than a sophomore year. You never really want to see a prospect go like that, right? You want to just see consistent, okay, they're getting better and better. And unquestionably, despite the injuries, I think we can all agree that Xavier Worthy was not exactly the same player that he was as a freshman. So we need a big bounce back from him. I've seen a lot of people compare him to Devonta Smith. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think he's the contested catcher that Devonta Smith is. I would compare him more to Hollywood Brown. Like, if he reaches his ceiling in the NFL, it will be what Hollywood Brown is. And that's a very good player, both for fantasy and for an NFL team. Someone who can stretch the field. But I don't see like some sort of top 12 to 15 potential for Xavier Worthy. And where is he going to line up in the NFL? He's 6'1", 163 pounds. Name a wide receiver that is under 165 pounds that has been top 24 in the past decade. Like, seriously, like, let me know. Who is that receiver that we're pointing towards for Xavier Worthy? At 163 pounds, when he lines up in press versus these 200-pound cornerbacks in the NFL, what is he going to do? So I don't know. I have some serious concerns. I think he's a limited player at the next level, and I think he's a better college player than he will be in the NFL. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments, okay? Because, you guys could be right. We'll find out. But a wide receiver that I have ahead of Xavier Worthy would be Rome Odunze. Now, Xavier's probably going to declare earlier than Rome, but I'm just a fan of Rome's game. I think he's a more complete wide receiver in this year's class. Good news, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and that's a trend with a lot of the guys outside of Xavier. It's a really good class for wide receivers as far as their size. We don't really need to ask the question of, with Zay Flowers, what about the size? With Jordan Addison, what about the size? Most of these guys got pretty good size on them that you could play them in most areas in the NFL, but he had a huge year last year. 75 receptions, 1,100 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Rome Odunze is one of those dudes where you guys go watch highlights. I spend hours watching film, but when you put on the film for certain receivers and you see their separation, you see their ability to manipulate coverages, their complete route tree, Rome is one of those guys for me. Specifically the game versus Washington State last year, I would encourage you to watch it because, man, he put some special moves on the defenders in that game. He's got a great connection with Michael Penix Jr., who should have a huge year. And we could see Rome Odunze end up being a first-round pick next year if all things go his way. He's more than likely a second-round pick, but a first-round pick is within the realm of possibilities. And I'll just say, no, I do not have Michael Penix Jr. on this list. I believe he'll be 24 years old when he enters the NFL, which is not a big deal. But it's not like he's not had a lot of chances. I think this is going to be his 6th year in college football. Like, That's gotta be somewhat concerning. I'm sorry, Washington fans. I'm a little bit concerned that it took you 5 years to break out in the college. That's concerning. I mean, you broke out at the age of what, 23, when everyone around you was 19, 20. It's concerning to me. I'm sorry. Okay, the other quarterback I wanted to talk about today is KJ Jefferson here in tier 6. You would know that I love KJ Jefferson if you were subscribed to this channel this time last year. Because all throughout the college football season, I would not shut up, and people were annoyed about it, and they were commenting that they were annoyed about it, and I get it, because I wouldn't shut up about the guy. I'm a huge fan. In 2021, he had an incredible year, extremely efficient through the air, didn't force any turnovers, took care of the ball, was dominant on the ground, 650 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. In 2022, the next year, he loses Treylon Burks, his dominant alpha wide receiver 1. And he improves in every category per game. He played 2 less games because of an injury, but on a per game basis, he improves in every category. This is a guy who, leadership wise, can unquestionably step into a locker room and demand respect from day one. He reminds me so much of Jalen Hurts. It's actually kind of scary. If the NFL wants to find the next Jalen Hurts, this sort of mold of quarterback who, super athlete, great in the weight room, will be, an example to his teammates, well-respected leader, not a premier passer by any means, but is a dual threat guy who can keep the defense guessing, that you can build a fun game plan around. KJ Jefferson's that guy. And look, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Jalen Hurts. It's very unlikely that happens, but I see a lot of the same formula that Hurts had. I could see him being a late first, early second round pick if all things go his way. And with his upside on the ground, like, the sky's the limit for a guy like KJ Jefferson. I mean, if he starts year 2 like Jalen Hurts did, there's a very realistic chance he's a top 12 quarterback in fantasy. Okay, and this is where I would put another 2022, 23 rather, Dynasty rookie pick, which is Dalton Kincaid. Now, I myself do not value tight ends the way that other people do when it comes to rookie drafts. Unless you're in a tight end premium league, which that's not what these rankings are based on, it just takes a long time for tight ends to really develop. I mean, if you look at the last decade, I wrote an article about this on Flock Fantasy, but if you look at the last decade and all tight ends who were taken in the first round, their average fantasy finish in their rookie season is tight end 25. It's just really unlikely that a tight end just drastically raises their draft capital year 1. We don't typically see it, right? There's outliers, but we don't typically see it. Okay, here into tier 5, we've got 3 running backs I love all these running backs for different reasons. They're different players for sure. I love all of them. I could see any one of them catapulting themselves into tier 4 or to tier 3. They're that good. And I think you could order them in any way you want to right now, but they're all very good. And I'm excited to watch them in college football this year. First one I will put Braylon Allen, the big monster of a human being out of Wisconsin. The dude is 6'1", 235. He is not human. I mean, if you were to stand next to him, it's like that photo of Derrick Henry at Alabama standing next to Mark Ingram, who wasn't dressed. You might know that meme. That's what it was like. I mean, he's just a monster. And as a true freshman, he broke out. He was 17 years old, guys. 17/18 years old. And he put up 1,200 rushing yards on 6.8 yards per carry and 12 rushing touchdowns. Unheard of stuff. Once he became the starter, there was a 2-game span where he put up over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in the span of 2 weeks. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Derrick Henry, but if you're trying to find a comp for him, it's pretty damn close. I mean, Derrick Henry's got the body. They play the game very similarly. They're both violent. They both break off runs. And they might not be the most elusive players, right? So I'm a big fan of Braylon. I also really love Will Shipley, who was the only shining star in a terrible Clemson offense last year. Truly, 5-star recruit. He was the number 2 running back in his recruiting class. He's a complete all-around running back, and his I would say his like part of his game that people don't give him enough respect for is what he does through the air. This year, he had over 35 receptions, which for a college football running back, that's a pretty good number for your second year. He was over, I think, 1,300 all-purpose yards. This Clemson offense is going to be better this year, and Will Shipley is going to put up some huge numbers. He should put himself on the map for the NFL draft. I think he's a lock to be a second-round pick unless an injury happens. You see a little Joe Mixon. You see a discount CMC. A little bit of that in his game. A little bit undersized. He's 205 pounds. Don't love that. Wish he was 210 at least, but yeah, speaking of another guy who's slightly undersized, around 204 pounds, 6'1", that's Donovan Edwards, the running back out of Michigan. You might be asking yourself, where's Blake Corum? I'm sorry. I think that Blake Corum will not be as good of a NFL prospect as Donovan Edwards. And that's a completely different video, but I'm a big fan of Edwards. Love his versatility. I mean, it feels like every time Edwards is touching the ball, he is making a huge play. It's almost Travis Etienne-like. It's almost Alvin Kamara-like. You see some of those similarities. Great pass catcher, super explosive, always doing a lot with the touches that he's given. If you look last year, yards per attempt, he was third in college football out of 168 running backs who had a minimum of 100 attempts. In yards after contact per attempt, he was 28th, which is good for his size. Breakaway percentage, he was 5th at 53.1%, meaning over 53% of the times that he touched the ball and had a carry, he got over 15 yards. That's ridiculous. Yards per route run, he was 12th amongst running backs. I mean, to me, when you look at a guy who's going to be dominant in fantasy in a PPR format, that's what I see in Donovan Edwards. A guy, is he going to get you consistent 1,000-yard seasons? Maybe not, but he'll probably get you like 800 rushing yards and 800 receiving yards. You know, that's the kind of back we're looking at here. Again, any of those guys could eventually catapult themselves into tier 4. Okay, let's talk about this tier 4. The first guy I would have there is a 2023 guy, which is Zay Flowers. We have a little run of those receivers. Then Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, all receivers that I like. Honestly, I think those guys are a little bit disrespected. A lot of people put a lot of stock into this 23 class. Some injuries happened. Some players didn't live up. Some players, to the hype. Some players returned to college. But I think these guys are very good picks in your dynasty drafts. Specifically, Zay Flowers, I think he's being too disrespected. These guys are well worthy of a first-round pick in rookie drafts this year. And next, I have this player a little bit lower than the average person would, but again, I need to explain myself. That is Brock Bowers. Okay, so much can change from now to the NFL draft. If Brock Bowers is a top 5 pick, you think I'm moving him up? I'm moving him up. But if he's like a top 20 pick, I think this is a reasonable placement for him. Again, because tight ends take a while to transition in the NFL. It's just a different requirement of the position from being a collegiate athlete to an NFL player. And we all know how good Brock Bowers is. This is the best tight end prospect since Kyle Pitts. He's a freak. I've showed you guys this before, but shout out to Chris Moxley and the guys at Campus to Canton. If you look at some names that Brock Bowers compares really well athletically to, according to Campus to Canton, which does great work on college football players, he compares really well to George Kittle, Jared Cook, Darren Waller. And then last year, he was first in receiving yards. He was first in receiving touchdowns, or he was fifth. Sorry, my bad. He was fourth in yards per reception. He was third in yards per route run. He had the most yak at the position. He was fourth in yak per reception. Contested catch percentage was fourth, and he had the third most first downs. It's a versatile guy. He played 60% in the slot and then a little bit in line, a little bit out wide. You can line him up wherever you want. He's the perfect fit for the modern day receiving tight end. It's just when will your pick in a non-tight end premium league pay off for you? When will it gain value? When will you X your money? When will you double? We talk about the stock market, not on this channel because for legal reasons, I can't give you advice, but when will you double your money? When will you triple your money? It's hard to say with the tight end position. And at the moment, I would have Malik Neighbors pretty firmly ahead of him. I'm pretty confident Malik Neighbors is going to be a first-round wide receiver. And if both Brock and Malik are picked in the first round, I think Malik is going to end up being the better pick. But he's got great size for the modern day NFL receiver at 6'1", 188 pounds. Again, the size for these top wide receivers in this class, it's perfect. We don't have to talk about any sort of size narrative, but he was just the dominant player in this receiving room last year. He made Boutte look like a 6th-round pick, and Boutte ended up being a 6th-round pick, but Boutte was nowhere near what Malik Neighbors was last year. He's an X-Factor yak wide receiver, great body control, specifically on the sideline. Just throw the ball up, watch him make a catch. Great separator, can manipulate coverages, just like we talked about with Rome Odunze. Put up over 1,000 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think Malik Neighbors is, if he plays every game and he has solid quarterback play, we could see him in the Blitnikoff Award conversation. I'm a big fan of Neighbors, and honestly, I think we can move Neighbors up a tier. I really think that that's a possibility. In fact, I might go ahead and do that. Let's talk about tier 3. Malik Neighbors joins tier 3, and okay, again, my ranking isn't just going to be chalk. I'm not going to tell you Travion Henderson's the best running back in the class if my eyes don't tell me that and the analytics don't tell me that. So this is where I would have Travion Henderson. I'm really sorry. I know there was huge hype for him coming out of high school. #1 recruit at the running back position, 5-star recruit, currently projected to be a first-round pick. I will move Travion Henderson up when he returns to form. That's as simple as it is. I think he's uber talented. I really do. And I know he was injured last year, but again, just like Xavier Worthy, when you start your career so well and you have a little dip, that's concerning. We have to be slightly concerned. Now, we all hold a right to change our rankings for the 24 class when we see them play next year. Like, that just makes sense. So Travion is one of those guys who absolutely could move up into tier 2 or even tier 1 if all things go right for him. In 2021, he was dominant, super efficient, 6.8 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns on the ground, 4 through the air, almost 20 total touchdowns, and all-purpose yards. He had over 1,500. Uber efficient, looked fantastic. In 2022, he missed a bunch of games, wasn't as efficient. I know he was dealing with an injury, wasn't the threat in the air that he was previously. And then even on a analytic point of view, he was much worse last year. Out of 168 running backs, he was 56 in yards per attempt. Not a good number. He had the 111th PFF rush grade. Not good. Again, out of 168 running backs. His breakaway percentage was 112th, and his yards after contact per attempt was 127th. He has the talent to be a first-round pick in the NFL. He really does. Even as rare as that is for running backs nowadays. But he needs to have a much better season. We need to see the 2021 version of Travion Henderson in order to really put first-round capital on him. So call me a hater, call me whatever you want, but I am a little bit lower on him at this very moment than your average person, your average analyst. And now let's talk about a running back that you might not like that I have ahead of him, but that is Trey Benson. I am a big Trey Benson guy. Really loved diving into his film. He ended up transferring from Oregon to Florida State. He had a redshirt freshman year because of an injury, and then he transferred to Florida State before the 2022 season. But this dude has it all. Big body, insanely explosive. He breaks tackles at an elite level. He has great speed for being 215 pounds. He is, at the running back position, my biggest breakout candidate in college football. Last year, he didn't get, 250 touches like some of these other running backs because there were 3 running backs that Florida State used in rotation, all guys who had over 90 carries. Benson led them as a sophomore, which is good, with 154, but we'll see him take on a bigger role here in 2023. And shout out to Austin Abbott. I've used this tweet quite a few times, but I think it's very interesting for you guys to see in case you missed it. Last year, Benson forced 79 missed tackles on 154 attempts. meaning 51% of his carries, he forced a missed tackle, which is ridiculous. Bijan Robinson, who we all talk about being the GOAT right now for rookies at forcing missed tackles, had 104 on 258 attempts, meaning 40% of his carries, he forced a missed tackle. If you do some quick maths, that means that Benson forced a missed tackle 11% more of the time than Bijan Robinson. Now, again, to be fair, Bijan was handling a lot more attempts, which means that Trey Benson, every time he touched the ball, was fresher, right? He had fresher legs. He wasn't as worn out. So let's see what Trey Benson looks like when he gets a full workload. But anyway, he was very efficient, very impressive. He averaged 6.4 yards per attempt, which was 13th. Again, better yards per attempt than Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. His yards after contact per attempt was 6th of 168 running backs who had a minimum of 100 attempts. He had a better yards after contact per attempt than Zach Charbonnet, Tank Bigsby, Bijan Robinson. He forced 79 missed tackles, which was 6th in the NFL. He had a breakaway percentage of 56.1%, which was 3rd, even better than Donovan Edwards. He had the best elusive rating in the nation. He had the 11th best run grade. I mean, he was absolutely dominant. Let's see him get 250 carries and just put up a huge year here in 2023. Okay, let's go ahead and go to Emeka Egbuka here, who is the he's not given enough respect. Well, where's my respect? Emeka Egbuka deserves respect. I know we all love Marvin Harrison, but Emeka Egbuka, 5-star recruit out of high school. He has the pedigree, #1 receiver in the 2021 high school class, put up over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. Great route runner, consistent separator, great hands, great yak guy, can play everywhere on the field at 6'1", 205. He reminds me a little bit of Michael Crabtree, a young Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris Godwin. I think Emeka Egbuka's ceiling is when Chris Godwin went off and was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. Emeka can be what Chris Godwin is for the Bucs. That's as simple as it is. Emeka can fill those shoes for an NFL team. Okay, and then the last player here in tier 3, which I actually wanted to move up into tier 2. Maybe he's worthy of it. It's just draft capital is so important for a running back. This is where I would put Rocket Sanders, who is my RB1 in the 24 class. I'll go ahead and talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. I want to put Raheem Sanders in the same tier as Jahmyr Gibbs. It's unlikely that Raheem gets the same draft capital. I think he's worthy of a late first-round pick, but I don't think Sanders is going to be a top 12 pick in the NFL draft, and draft capital is so important historically. Honestly, you can make a case that Sanders is the more well-rounded running back. I mean, he's got the bigger body. He can handle a workload. He's not as good in the receiving game, of course, but Rocket Sanders, my RB1 in the class, put up huge numbers last year. Over 1,400 rushing yards at 6.5 yards per attempt. He had 10 touchdowns on the ground and 27 receptions through the air. He had the 4th best yards per attempt amongst running backs with 200 plus carries. And he had the best yards per attempt of any running back in the SEC with 200 plus carries. He had a better yards per attempt in the SEC, by the way, than Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Blake Corum, who went crazy, Quinshawn Judkins, Tank Bigsby, and Kendre Miller. He was uber efficient in the toughest conference that any running back can face in college football. If you're looking for a comp, he reminds me a ton of Zeke Elliott. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Zeke, but man, they have a very similar playing style. Big fan of Rocket Sanders. Okay, here in the top 2 tiers, we might go through this relatively quickly because I've spent a lot of time. Hopefully you guys like the in-depth. Maybe you're like, can this guy shut up and just get through his rankings? But my tier 2 is just all 2023 rookies because, it is a little bit of a top-heavy class, but there's some really good players still in the 2022 class. We've got Jahmyr Gibbs. We've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's a big debate right now, JSN or Jahmyr Gibbs. Who do you want? Okay, you make the decision. In most of my leagues, I'm going JSN. I know that's controversial. Fight me in the comments. But there's times where I go Gibbs. I think they're very equal in value right now. We got CJ Stroud here. We got Anthony Richardson. And we've got Bryce Young. All these guys in the same tier. If you're in a rookie draft right now, the 102 to the 106, you're picking one of these guys almost all the time in Superflex. And we've talked about them pretty well in depth. So let's move on to tier 1. And I do think the top end talent, those elite guys that will be in the top 3 of your rookie drafts, I do think the 24 class has the edge. I really do. First, let's talk about Drake May, who was absolutely incredible last year. Caleb Williams kind of took the limelight, but Drake May was really, really good. He reminds me a little bit of a Justin Herbert, a Joe Burrow, a Trevor Lawrence. Think about how those 3 players, quarterbacks play the position. I see a lot of Drake May, when I see those 3 guys, or I see a lot of them in Drake May rather. But Drake May was great last year. He threw the 6th most touchdowns in college football, didn't throw many interceptions, threw the 4th most passing touchdowns, had the most big time throws, which big time throws is categorized as a pass with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further down the field or in a tighter window, which is very impressive. A lot of scouts actually look at big time throws because it kind of shows how you can translate to the next level when, things are broken down. His big time throw percentage was 2nd. He faced the most amount of pressures in the NFL and still performed incredibly. He had the most scrambles in the NFL. He put up over 700 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. So he's got the size at 6'4", 220. He balled out. He's got the prototype to be a franchise quarterback. He's pretty much a lock to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. I will put Bijan Robinson right next to him because we know how damn good Bijan Robinson is. And then to finish, we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. You guys know how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is. I don't need to spend much time on him. Probably the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase, even though I think they're very different wide receivers. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is much more Larry Fitzgerald than he is Jamar Chase. Just my personal opinion. I don't think Marvin Harrison has the same explosiveness that Chase had. I'm not saying he's not explosive. I'm just saying I think he has strengths in other areas, like the body control, the route running. I think he's a better route runner than Chase, but I don't think he has the same explosiveness. And then at number 1, you either hate him or you love him, but I think he's unquestionably the 101 in this exercise, Caleb Williams. Will he be the next Patrick Mahomes? Who knows? We'll find out. But man, does he show all of the traits to potentially be that type of superstar quarterback in the NFL. He does it through the air. He does it on the ground. Last year, he had the most passing touchdowns with 42. He threw barely any interceptions, only 5 interceptions. He had the 3rd most passing yards. He was 4th in big time throws. He faced the most amount of pressures. He scrambled the 20th most. He had the 4th best NFL passer rating and the 6th best PFF pass grade. Anything can change at the moment, but he looks like the 1st overall pick in 2024. And also, he's very good on the ground. He had 10 rushing touchdowns. He had 52 total touchdowns, and he looks ridiculously good. Okay, that was a little bit long, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe it was too in-depth. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Did you like this? Drop a like if you did. Should I keep talking about the 24 class? I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the season. I'm excited to see the 23 rookies. I'm excited to see the 24 rookies play college football. I'm excited for everything. Okay. So catch us in the next video. Thanks for watching. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.